third one this year. This one is a specific topic looking a little bit into the future of, make your marketing recession proof. For those of you who are active on Twitter, please feel free to look us up and follow us on Twitter at anvilmedia.com, and my personal email or Twitter account is at pdxadman. So what I want to do today is go over how to identify what's going on with the recession, which is some of that is easy to acknowledge, some of it's not, and then go into specifics from the marketing perspective of how to try and make your marketing and your sales efforts recession proof. So as we get going, a little bit about me. I've been in marketing and advertising for over 22 years, been working in ad agencies specifically for over 20 years. And my second ad agency experience, 9/11 happened. And, that was an impact upon the economy. It was a national tragedy. A lot of things that were completely unpredicted that happened. That at the same time was convergence in the emergence of digital marketing and the internet as a whole. So that was one aspect that I have navigated and survived in my career. And also the Great Recession, however you want to title that, or however long you want that to be, from 06 to 09 or 07, 08. Also worked with many brands in navigating that. And over my career, I've worked with over 200 brands. Just put 5 on there that you may acknowledge or may know of, but I've also worked with a lot of small, medium-sized businesses, as well as some of the Fortune 1000. So I understand businesses' challenges, both large and small, and companies that have a large marketing department of 50 or more, or marketing departments of 2 to 3. So I understand the challenges, and so what I wanted to do with this presentation is put something together that would be scalable and work for each enterprise, no matter what the size. So the agenda is identify a recession. Again, some of that's fairly easy, and then how to take action. Go through 7 steps to recession-proof your marketing, and then at the end, I want to add one more thing, and then we also are tabulating questions and answers throughout. So there will be time at the end to chat in and ask us questions, and we'll answer those as well. And then afterwards, we will share this presentation both on YouTube and SlideShare. So I'll take it underway. So, do recessions just happen? Well, some of those things, as I mentioned earlier, 9/11 happened, and that wasn't a recession that anyone could predict. So I would say not always. Here I'm saying no, and we can look at economic indicators that, by not only watching the news or following your portfolio online, seeing what's going on from an unemployment standpoint, the housing market. So these are the 3 things that impact, officially make a recession a recession. And as things continue to evolve in our current state in March 2019, these are fluid occurrences. So I took a screenshot of the stock market from a couple of days ago. We see, since March about last year, the stock market has gone up significantly. However, there's peaks and there's valleys, and those are large deltas in change, from almost 27,000 of the Dow Jones down to 22,000. So, looking at what happened in October, there was a lot of news about the stock market crashing, that it's coming down post-election, and those are things that are impacting what's going on and what's creating some of the market uncertainty. But we also, when I look back to 2016, when the election was going on, when the country wasn't certain who was going to be the next president, there was a lot of market pausing, both consumers pausing their purchases as well as companies making decisions on how to allocate their budgets to go forward in the marketplace. So the stock market is the first thing that you need to look at as one of the canaries in the mine shaft. The second one is the unemployment trends. So this is a future-looking trend that I pulled from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and this was from beginning of this month, so beginning of March. So looking at this bell curve, how they're looking that unemployment will go up to some degree, and so that we don't see any giant spikes. One of the challenges that I'll get to here in a slide or two is market conditions and what's going on with some Fortune 50 brands that are going to have an impact on what may happen in the unemployment market. So unemployment trend is the second indicator that a recession may be coming. And then the third is one that is important to everyone, is the housing market. So doing some back research on the housing market, there is the high rental markets on the West Coast specifically, in San Francisco, around Los Angeles, where the rental prices are as expensive or more so than the mortgage rates and what people will pay for a mortgage. So how that is impacting the market and the housing standpoint is that the millennials who are still looking to get into their first home are struggling to be able to save up on a monthly basis to have that down payment for their first home, and that is having a rippling effect currently on the housing market. So that is something to keep an eye on. The prognosticators are not saying that the housing market is going to tank, but as interest rates have continued to go up marginally and the barriers to entry into an entry-level home, those are things to look at. So all three of those conditions are a little fluid, but they're all a little uncertain. And then the other factor that I didn't put it as the fourth, but is the news. So with Boeing having their new jets grounded by the president is going to have an impact. Are they going to have layoffs? How is that going to ripple back in through the travel industry, which then may impact tourism and things as summer's approaching? You know, the constant Twitter feedback that's going on in both in politics and within the news. You know, looking on internationally, what's going on with Britain voting on their Brexit. You know, the conflict in Pakistan, India. All of these are indicators that are something to look at as you are looking to see if a recession is coming on us. So those are the things to look for. So, you know, we never like to take the approach that we're victims. We want to make sure that, you know, our clients and ourselves as a company are looking ahead. So, you know, George Bernard Shaw here has a quote that the possibilities are numerous once we decide to act and not react. And so that's the main takeaway for this whole presentation, is to take action and not react and anticipate what's going on. So now I'm going to take a dive into the 7 steps to recession-proof your marketing. And I have a little bit of a tinge for some of the movies from the 80s because that's kind of where I'm from. So the first one obviously is be prepared. As we look around and see what's going on in the news, you know, how the stock market's, you know, up and down, the housing market is uncertain. You know, how are things looking from an economic standpoint? And from what we see, and what you can see as well, is that, you know, things are slowing down. And can we say with certainty that there will be a recession in 2019? No, we can't. But what the indicators are telling us is that the market isn't strong, that things are uncertain. So our recommendation is to start preparing now. And looking at your marketing specifically, is what marketing channels are you currently using? You know, how is your sales team performing? And now is the time to go through and optimize which marketing channels are working, which are not, which internal systems you have, if you have a marketing automation system in place, if you have a lead generation system in place, if you have a digital marketing campaign. Make sure you're starting to analyze and look at your performers now. And if you haven't already, create some type of dashboard or measurable element of those channels so that you can begin to report to whomever in your organization of what's working and what's not, and be proactive. And then things that are not working, sunset's a nice way of saying get rid of them. And the inevitable question that's going to come up is about headcount and budget. And so if you're keeping an eye on what's performing and what's not, you can look at maybe sunsetting or removing a system that may not be working internally. For instance, looking at a Salesforce solution, which is an expensive solution, versus a lower price solution, depending on the size of your company or enterprise. So what are ways that you can look at cutting your budget before the actual decision comes down? The second step is, fight for your marketing budget. This is going to be a decision that usually comes down from the C-suite, maybe from the CFO, or whoever your organization is organized. From the research we did preparing for this presentation, you need to, during the recession, you need to continue to do your current level of advertising and marketing. And research has shown that companies that increase their advertising, we understand and know that's a tough sell, that you can continue to drive your market share and drive your revenue. And the other thing is, if your organization is driven from an operations budget standpoint and from sometimes a fear foundation, that they will want to go dark completely or not go to the main conference where you go and get your leads or make your contacts. Our recommendation is to not go dark. What are other ways that you might be able to keep your same budget, but optimize it in a different way. So instead of going to a conference for 2 days, you can save some budget marginally for if you go for 1 day, or there are other ways that you can look at events that you have on your marketing calendar that would need to be adjusted from a monetary standpoint, that if you can take a look and change that. And finally, be careful what you cut, because those channels will be shut down immediately. So as I said previously, if you plan ahead and be prepared, once that decision comes and that meeting is held, you'll already have your game plan in place for how to proceed. The third step is aligning sales and marketing. And we know that this is easier said than done. The analogy of the Avengers, look at my kids are huge Marvel fans. Tony Stark was the egotistical leader, but you had to bring everyone together to work together. So you're going to have maybe a head salesperson, maybe a head marketing person. They're in their silos, they do their different things, but now is the time to start to work together. Because if they see arguments or disalignment within the sales and marketing organization, those are going to be some of the first items that are going to be looked to cut from outsiders of those areas. So what are the ways that you can work together to drive the pipeline? So are the leads that marketing is generating being followed up through with the sales team, and is the sales team using the sales tools you've set up for them? Are they using the Marketo or HubSpot or any other marketing automation tool? What's their back-end tool? Are they using Salesforce? Are they using something else? If they're not using it, then maybe that's a sign that you need to go to a simpler, maybe more cost-effective channel. And as I mentioned, if there is separation or disagreement, those are some of the first items that someone on the C-suite or in the operations level would look to cut. Fourth, as you look at Ed Harris here from Pollock, get creative. What marketing efforts are performing, and what would you want to improve that can be improved with minimal effort. So, for instance, if you have a digital marketing campaign where you are targeting B2B audience within LinkedIn, is there a way that you can then perhaps do a lookalike campaign through AdWords, where you might be able to do it more cost effectively within AdWords and pause anything with LinkedIn to then run that campaign? Looking at any ways that might still drive leads, things that can drive revenue, but pivot to some degree to a channel that might be more affordable. One of the other things from a lead generation standpoint is landing pages, and this is one of the most often overlooked components of a digital marketing campaign. Lots of clients have AdWords campaigns going, or their Facebook campaigns, or their LinkedIn campaigns, or whatever channel they're using, and they have the right targeting, they have the right messaging, they have everything set up properly within the mechanics of the campaigns themselves, but their landing pages fall short. And so what we would recommend is make sure that's where the customer's making their decision. Is there a clear call to action? Are you really driving them down to the bottom of the funnel to act and engage, specifically how you lured them there from the ad itself? So we recommend that you review, revise, and relaunch anything that has been going on. And as we'll share here in a few moments, what, from an organizational standpoint, have you been contemplating that you might want to be able to roll out that might help your customers? So as we all experience the recession, different customers or different clients have different needs, and everyone's going to be looking to cut budgets or cut expenditures. Is there a way that you can bundle your product, your service, in a way that still delivers the value of your core brand attributes, but delivers it to them in a way that is more appealing than your competitor? Because all of your competitors are going to be in the same boat, and how they react is going to also impact the market. So we recommend put on a creative hat, see what's effective, and rethink some of your current strategies. So I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about 3 brands that succeeded during the Great Recession and 3 that didn't. And these are examples of companies that not only changed necessarily how they marketed, but they changed their product mix and the product service in a time where they could have easily gone out of business. So first I'll talk about Netflix. Netflix in 2009, at that time, they were mailing people DVDs, and this was the same time when you still had your Blockbuster videos out there. You still got your content through your video store. And so they've switched the service as the internet continued to grow and Wi-Fi has expanded exponentially to start streaming their service. And so this was a game changer, which then obviously after the fact had spawned Hulu and now Amazon Prime, where this pivot and change in how they delivered their content drove their revenue, drove their conversions, drove their sales, drove their membership. And almost everyone, that's within the marketing advertising space understands and knows that, or has a Netflix account and what they did. And so, they could have easily gone out of business as Blockbuster did, which I'll show here in a few moments, but they are now over 117 million subscribers and going strong and creating original content. So they could have tried to maintain and say, let's bundle up hard discs of DVDs and try and do it that way. They looked at the market and how people are consuming content, looked at the trends. People are going more mobile. This was at the time the emergence of more of the tablets were becoming new and the iPads were new, and they took advantage of that and were successful. Another one that you may or may not be familiar with is Domino's. So Domino's used to be Domino's Pizza, and at this time during the Great Recession, they were running TV commercials about their customers and how their customers hated their product. When they got their pizza delivered to them, the cheese was stuck to the box, the sauce tasted like ketchup, it was frozen dough, it was basically slamming their own product. And what they did, instead of trying to lower their price on their product, they went through and reevaluated their product. They went and got chefs to give them new recipes for their products. They changed fundamentally how they made their pizzas. And then as a franchise model, then that had to be dictated and carried out throughout those franchisees. So over this duration, they went through, changed their name from Domino's Pizza to Domino's, improved their pizza menu, and then they added more chicken wings, snack items, in the quick service food market to improve their sales. And at that time, they had improved their sales almost $24 million. And that's a turnaround that they've continued to do despite the perception that their food may or may not be of the highest quality. It has certainly been improved, and they took the chance, and it paid off for them. The third example of a brand that survived during the recession was Lego. And this is a hard goods, it's a toy product, obviously. How they look to survive and grow during this downtrend is they look to other markets. Obviously, the Great Recession affected the U.S. economy, but they look to other markets in Europe and Asia for opportunities to launch their product or roll out or focus sales on that. So likewise, as maybe the U.S. market becomes recessed, are there other markets in the world where you might be able to focus on selling your product where it may not have as much of an impact on your overall revenue? And in addition to looking at different markets, they got a giant viral lift by having David Beckham, say that he was building a Lego Taj Mahal. And so just him sharing that on his social media, and then them using and leveraging that through their own PR efforts, allowed them to get a giant increase of almost 700% through their endorsement of their product. And so again, looking at a service provider, which is essentially Netflix, a toy manufacturer, and a restaurant food service of those who survived and made a business pivot during the Great Recession. So a quick snapshot at those who weren't creative and brands that failed during the Great Recession. I love to show the Be Kind Rewind on the Blockbuster video. Bend, Oregon is the last place in the United States that actually has a Blockbuster video. And so they essentially didn't change their business model. They tried to change things over time, but they were too late. And so instead of trying to get into the streaming video market like Netflix did, they doubled down and tried to get more retail space and more brick and mortar locations. And they had to file bankruptcy, and they're all but an anecdote on what happened after that collapsed. Hummer was a combination of things that were going on during the Great Recession. One, it was a product of excess and some type of status symbol, but also was a gas guzzler. During the latter part of the Bush administration, gas prices soared to $4 or $5 a gallon, so that helped drive sales down into the ground for the Hummer. In addition to the Great Recession coming in with a high price point, there was no real need for this. And then General Motors went through and as they filed bankruptcy, they had to strip through and clear out their different brands. And Hummer just didn't fit the market, didn't fit the mind space. And this is a time where if you want to be economical, it's the time where Prius sales grew and not those of Hummer or other gas guzzlers. And then the third and final example, this one is from the East Coast, may not be one that's as familiar to all those who are on this webinar, but Susies look to expand, and they have a stationery store somewhat congruent to Hallmark, and with their knickknacks, cards, and stationery. They look to grow, but they expanded too far, and they didn't adjust, and they also filed bankruptcy protection. And so there are only 6 locations left for Susies. However, they, even though they have shrunk their brick and mortar locations, they do still exist online to some degree. But again, they didn't anticipate what was going on in the market. They didn't have a plan, and they didn't get creative or look at other ways to grow their sales. So looking at your budget specifically, one of the things we recommend is make sure you're cutting the right costs. From a marketing perspective, you don't have the power or the say or the vote to go and cut costs in the manufacturing or administrative process. But we all know on this webinar that it's marketing and sales that drive revenue and company growth. So any change in there is going to have a direct impact. And if you have any input into looking at the manufacturing process, look at your distribution network, administrative costs that can be cut, we would recommend those need to be evaluated before you look at your marketing. But as you look at your marketing budget, this is research that is out there, that you're cutting your ad spend will immediately impact the reduce of your company's income. So it's showing that a cut will drop your income 20 to 30% over 2 years. So say typical recession is 13 to 15 months. If you're making your cut to your ad spend, your income, no matter what, if there's a rebound in the marketplace, is going to lag for at least 2 years. And if you cut your ad spend, it can do it for even longer. And some of the research we did before this presentation mentioned that could affect it as much as 5 years. As you look at the different segments you may be in. If you're in a B2B market space, what's the lead time? What's the time to close from making a decision? If you are absent in the time of the seasonality of them to gather the research on your product, your service, you will be out of luck and you will not be considered. So you need to make sure that anything that's cut is a channel that may not make sense, and I'll get into that here in a couple more slides. But and also finally, cutting your spend puts your brand at risk that you won't even be considered. And some of those are in the examples I mentioned previously, but those are things that you need to make sure that you make good decisions before changes are made. So traditional marketing channels, so print, radio, TV, some people on this webinar are using those as some of their primary marketing channels. One of the things that we would look at is how many of these traditional marketing channels that you use, whether it's also going to trade shows, advertising in trade show magazines, how many of these are actually truly measurable for you. We know that these are all great awareness tools. They can create awareness within a market. You can run an ad in a magazine, or you can do airport advertising or some of these things to raise general awareness. However, you can't track specifically how it impacted or drove sales or revenue. All you have are impression numbers and circulation numbers that are given to you by the advertisers themselves. So to me, if you have a traditional channel, a digital marketing channel, traditional will be the first place to look, and then augment what you do and improve and add any spend to digital. So looking at digital, obviously we are biased to some degree as we're a digital marketing agency, but everything that we do for our clients on their behalf, it's measurable. We can report a dashboard on how the website is performing, how inbound marketing is working, how many leads were generated from the email marketing campaign, what's their open rate, what's their read rate, what's their forward rate, how is their pay-per-click advertising performing, how is their paid social campaign delivering in LinkedIn, is it driving those specific B2B leads, can we target and segment people within a specific company with a specific job title. Those are all things that you can do with digital, and everyone probably on the webinar is very aware of that. However, when it comes to making those cuts, you need to, to defend your budget and to defend what you are currently doing. It needs to be measurable and showing how it drives leads, drives sales, drives revenue, and continues to maintain the bottom line while you're in an economic downturn. And here's a slide from eMarketer talking about digital ad spending, looking at digital ad spending has continued to increase in 2019. This year, digital advertising was going to surpass traditional advertising. And as you can see on the right-hand side, radio, TV, and print are all dropping significantly. Directories is a fancy word of also including yellow pages and phone books, which have been pretty much obsolete for a decade. But the trend is also going to this way. So this is something, not only this is a recommendation from us to evaluate your traditional marketing for potentially cutting, it's also take a look at your digital marketing for ways to maybe increase or get as many leads or measurability than you are getting from your traditional marketing. The sixth step of the 7 we're talking about is turning to technology. So do you use marketing automation, and how do you manage your lead flow? A lot of clients in the B2B space have a large CRM or marketing automation platform. They're using a Marketo or they're using a Pardot. These are expensive platforms that take people with high salaries to operate, and at the end of the day, they're hard to manage. They're difficult to manage. And how do they integrate with Salesforce? And how is that Salesforce integration truly working? And going back to the planning and be prepared stage, before a recession hits, you need to go through and evaluate how are these tools being utilized by the teams that are plugged into them. Are they actively pursuing every lead? Are they tracking it and putting right attribution to the content that is being downloaded? Are the marketing automation programs being managed and updated on a regular basis? Because those are platforms, unfortunately, that are typically annual contracts, but something to start looking at sooner than later. The advantage of those systems, obviously, is that they can do the work of several people, but the challenge is that they sometimes can be over encumbering in how they're worked and how they're used. Another point is to, with the emergence of artificial intelligence technology, if you are, driving people to a website, to a e-commerce platform, the interactive chatbots have become very effective. Not only is Amazon is rolling them out, but other channels as well that help basically bring down what we call the last 5 feet of the sales process to make the user experience seamless and also defer from costs for having a call center. So for instance, if you have an AI chatbot as a plug-in to your website or your internet or your e-commerce experience, people are getting more and more used to using and interacting with that type of technology. 2019 and 2018, previously they were talking a lot about the emergence of artificial intelligence, but the reality is artificial intelligence is here, it's growing, and it's to be expected as a part of technology that will be interacted with customers, whether they're B2B, B2C, or however you interact. And the other point regarding technology goes back to, from a marketing perspective, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And we recommend connecting all your marketing efforts to some type of measurement tool. For instance, we use Google Data Studio for our clients with the digital marketing efforts that we do, but there are other executions and options out there as well, as from Tableau to, as I mentioned, Google Data Studio, some way to report and say what is going where. What's your return on investment for these different marketing efforts? What is the impressions? What's the lead flow? What's driving the most traffic? Then looking at that, and then you can make a very specific recommendation, change, cut based on data, not on gut, not on feel, not on what you think it may be, but basically looking at the data. And the more data that you can continue to aggregate and compile month over month, you can then identify trends. So that will also help you with budgeting, with a budgeting perspective, and how to augment or change any type of campaign from an ongoing basis. The last step that we recommend is that be resilient. Having been a survivor myself of two large recessions, obviously in this century, makes me sound really old, but you had to roll up your sleeves to get things done. Marketing departments have been cut to the bone since 9/11, and have continued to be revised and have to upgrade and adapt to other marketing trends that drive leads at a more cost-effective manner. So the emergence of digital has been significant. That's why the spending for digital is now beginning to outpace traditional, because it's measurable. And to be resilient, it's working those longer hours, rolling up your sleeves, going the extra mile to make sure that the marketing department is doing their part to continue to drive sales and revenue. From a anticipation standpoint, the people within your organization. If you are led by the bean counters, or you're operations focused, or if you're a marketing customer focused company, and should be able to anticipate or try to anticipate what decisions and reactions to a recession will come from the C-level. Is the founder of the company a CFO? Are they an accountant? Are they a numbers person? Does she think that marketing is a means to an end, or is it a critical lifeblood to your company's growth and revenue? Those are things that you need to try and anticipate to be able to plan accordingly for recession-proofing your marketing. The other thing, along with being creative, is, are you willing to try new things? With the example of Dominos, I don't think there's any pizza companies on the line, but look at completely changing your business model. Is that a time to, as the market is softening, is there maybe a new subsegment that may present itself that you might be able to test a product or service with, and then maybe launch it out in a new way? Is there a different channel that you've thought about but haven't done? Now might be the time to test and roll something like that out, and be willing to make those changes, and be bold, and be resilient to continue to fight through that. And then at the end of the day, we recommend that you may even have to look at a complete new marketing strategy, and make sure that what you are putting together shows that you are driving value through every step of the way. At the end of the day, whether the people who are running your company believe in marketing, trust marketing or not, the reality is that it does drive sales, it does drive revenue, it does drive leads. And the more you can prove that in your marketing platforms, in your measurability, the more likelihood that you're going to be sticking around to help ride through the storm with this organization. So as I'm getting close to wrapping it up, I want to remind you one more thing. As I've been around for over 20 years and seen lots of layoffs, lots of budget cuts, lots of things challenged, on a personal front, make sure you have yourself covered. I always like to tell people, keep your head on a swivel. As you've done your due diligence, keep your focus on your tasks at hand, keep your company not only solvent, but driving leads, driving revenue. But it's never too late to update your resume. You never know what's going to happen. Again, you got to keep your eye focused on your job, but also need to be realistic in what's going on in the marketplace and have your resume updated. We also recommend improve your LinkedIn profile. When you look at the right-hand side, do you have a professional headshot, or is it a photo with you and your spouse and you crop the other person out? Is it a goofy photo? Is it a business photo? Know your audience and know the type of job you have and the job you aspire to, and make sure that you have your LinkedIn profile updated with the title and all the credentials that you have. Because as I always say, you never know. Continue learning. Are there seminars within technologies or marketing channels that you're unfamiliar with or feel that are personally unsettling to you? I recommend that you look into and learn more about those, because the more tools that you have in your toolbox, I hate that analogy, but it's true, the more you have, the more valuable you are, the more likely you'll be able to not only have the skills to navigate and make it through a recession and help your company survive and thrive, but it will help you be more marketable as well. And last but not least, which seems to be more of a dying trend, is network. Within the market that you're in, look at other ways to network within your local, perhaps American Marketing Association. Maybe there's a digital conference. Maybe there is something within nowadays meetups are becoming more realistic. Look at the channels and things that are relevant to network and get to know other people within your area. And if you meet with someone for a coffee or a lunch, you can talk about your business challenges. They can talk about theirs. Again, you can get ideas not only in just how to increase your network for your personal self, but for your company to get more knowledge, and that will help you through. So, to recap, the 7 steps we've identified to recession-proof your marketing is: 1, be prepared. Make sure that you have, you look at what's going on in the marketplace, anticipate what may or may not happen, and put together a plan accordingly. And it's never too early to plan. As we're wrapping up Q1, you probably are not too far from having your 2019 plan presented and approved by your executive team anyway. So modify or develop what we call a plan B. Secondly, be prepared to fight for your marketing budget. Marketing budget is the first thing that I've seen that gets cut every time. And not only with that, then headcount of your team. So the best way to defend that is to have measurable results proving what your marketing and sales efforts are delivering for the company and where those channels are specifically coming from. That's the best defense for preventing that from being cut. Third is aligning sales and marketing. And I've seen more times than not sales and marketing not get along at all. And that is a challenge that it will last forever. But in a recession, that's the time to circle the wagons and work together and align what channels and what's the best way to drive leads from a marketing perspective for the sales team to close, and to really leave your egos at the door, work together, and make that work, because it'll make the company more successful. You'll be better off for it, and it will obviously help the company. Fourth is be creative. Don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to make changes, and look at other things that your competitors may or may not be doing. But don't think you can survive a recession by doing the same old things. Fifth, cut the right costs. Obviously cutting marketing and advertising is what we don't recommend, because that's the first way to put yourself out of business. Also, always changing your price is another race to the bottom. At the end of the day, customers and clients want value. If it's at a lower price, that's fine. But if you can combine and put together a value proposition that delivers more value at a similar comparable price, you'll probably be as effective. Sixth is turn to technology. If you're not using it already, use the right technology. There's a cornucopia of technology out there. A lot of it is expensive, a lot of it's premium, and there's also other solutions that are not premium that do just as much. So as you evaluate technology, what are the goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And benchmark those goals to the capabilities of the technologies you're considering, so that you're making the right choice, not only from a technology standpoint, but from a budget standpoint. And seventh is roll up your sleeves and be ready to fight. Fight for your budget, fight for your team, fight for the right strategy that's going to drive your sales, and continue to work hard. And that's the 7 steps we wanted to share with you today about recession-proofing your marketing. So one of the things before we get into the Q&As, I want to have to save the date. I have a different topic in next month on April 24th, Wednesday. It'll be from noon to 1, and you'll get an email reminder for that as well. It's talking about digital ad trends of what's going on within the marketplace. As some of you may or may not be familiar, Facebook and Instagram were both down yesterday. So with that basically monopoly from a digital standpoint being down, they're still evaluating how much impact did that have on brands out there that have used that as their sole channel. So as I just got done talking about evaluating and focusing on digital marketing, there are still some setbacks that can happen that aren't predictable. And that will be presented by our paid media specialist, Madeline. So at this time, I'll thank you for listening to me and going through this presentation, and I will respond to questions and answers. No, you're good. So one question that came in is, what is the cheapest platform for me to advertise on digitally? And that goes to, depending on specifically what your marketplace is, what's your company, what's your business, who's your target audience. But from a marketing perspective, digitally, Google AdWords, ad search, paid search is one of the cheapest ways to advertise digitally. Again, you have to know what your market is, what are people searching for, knowing, is that how people go about your business, or do people already know about what type of business you have? So from a digital perspective, almost every channel that you can advertise on, you can scale the budget down to hundreds of dollars to obviously tens of thousands of dollars. But it's Google provides many products that are cost effective to market to. And what we typically recommend is a paid search campaign followed and partnered with a remarketing display campaign that increases conversion rates over 80%. And every channel is very effective and cost effective, depending on what your goals are, with the exception of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very expensive channel, bought by Microsoft a couple of years ago. They still haven't figured out a way to properly deliver advertising, perhaps, and that's one of the channels I would say you need to maybe not use that channel if you're looking to spend money on a budget. Well, thank you everyone for your time, taking your lunch hour. I hope you have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and just keep your eyes on the market, see what's going on, and if a recession's on the way, you have some steps to prepare for that. So again, thanks for your time.